Hey guys, it's Amber with NotableInk.com, and I'm going to be using the Wow Freestyle Embossing Tool to ink up this Mondo Daisy stamp by Ellen Hutson today. The reason I wanted to do that is because I wanted really thick lines so that this Earthtone Honey powder would show up on this gold metallic cardstock that I'm using. So this is Stardream metallic cardstock from cardstock.com. This is my all-time favorite gold cardstock. It's super thick and it just has a beautiful shimmer without completely taking over the card and being distracting. So I'm using the Freestyle Embossing Tool over here, and I'm just kind of outlining the stamp line. So I wanted to use 3 different colors because I recently picked up 3 different earth-tone colors from Wow Embossing. I have the Earthtone Honey, Earthtone Pepper, and then I also have the green one. I want to say it's Envy, but that might not be right. We'll look at it when we get to that. So I'm just making sure that I get it inked up really well. And after I stamp this down, I'm going to show you how much of the embossing ink actually goes onto the paper. You get some really thick lines that are raised on their own without the powder, unlike when you just stamp it with your ink pad. So you can see that here. Do you see how thick those are? So I felt like that was really going to help me have this honey embossing powder show up on this cardstock because they're almost the same color. So before I used my embossing tool, I went ahead and used my powder bag, my anti-static powder bag. And you can see that I got some of the embossing powder on the middle, but I'm just going to leave that alone and go ahead because I'm going to emboss right over that with the Earthtone Pepper, which is a dark brown color. This is almost like a deep ochre, this honey color, and the Earthtone Pepper is almost like the E70 family. If you follow me, you know I'm in love with the E70 family of the Copic markers. It's kind of like a cocoa brown, and the tone of this embossing powder is very much like that, so it's definitely a new favorite of mine. So I'm heating up my embossing powder, and I overheat it in one section just a tad, so it started to get just a little white. So just be careful to see, I think right there, don't get too close to your paper and make sure you're moving it around. It was actually hard for me to see when this was melting because this powder stays really true to life. The color that it is when it goes on the page is pretty much the color once it melts. So it was a little hard for me to see whether or not things were melted. So once we get this all heated, we are going to add the Earthtone Pepper. So be sure to use your anti-static powder tool in between your applications because even though I cleaned my stamp in between and tried to wipe it off, because I'm taking this embossing tool straight to the stamp, I feel like there's still going to be some residual, and I don't want to get stray embossing powder of this pepper color all over the place. So I've inked up just the center, and I'm going to be really mindful when I pour on my embossing powder. Like you could see there were some shiny areas there where there was some embossing ink on the petals. So I'm going to flip this, try and flip it directly over without having it slide over the rest of the petals. And you can see just at the bottom there where it slid just a little bit, it did stick to those petals. So just be mindful of that and how you're flipping it over and how you're tossing on your powder. So I'm going to heat this from the back. You can see it already started to melt. Then I'll go ahead and heat it from the front. And I just love the texture of this Mondo Daisy in the center there. I think it's just so pretty. And then of course I wanted to do my stem in green. And for that we're going to use Earthtone Olive, and just again be sure to completely wipe off any residual embossing ink from your stamp. And again, be mindful when you're pouring on your powder and use your powder bag. So we'll get that stamped down. It's going to be nice and juicy. And then I do get, isn't this a gorgeous color? Look at that. I love all 3 of these colors. So this wasn't a trio. I bought these individually, but I thought that they just went so well together. And I do believe that there are other colors in this Earthtone line. So I'm just using a paintbrush, and this is just an inexpensive paintbrush. And I have this one reserved specifically to knock off embossing powder. I'm going to heat that, and it's going to go really quickly because it's not much powder at all. Now you could use your embossing tool to fill in that stem completely. I chose just to leave it open, but that's definitely another thing that you could do too, is have a solid stem. So I'm going to go ahead and die cut this with the coordinating die for the Mondo Daisy. And then I'm going to use this underwater sun rays stencil from Studio Katia because I wanted to have kind of like a modern retro background for this. So I'm going to use a couple different browns. I wasn't totally sold on this Mocha, and I think it's because my ink blending brush was a little dirty. I think it had some residual of another color on it. So I brought in espresso ink to just warm that up a little bit. And it's a little redder than I wanted, but still better than that first one. Was a little too ash. So then I'm going to use Galactic Stream. I'm going to do brown, green, yellow, and also some blue because I wanted to have a hint of sky in there. And I end up ink blending 3 of these panels because I couldn't decide what configuration I wanted to use for my background. I'm only obviously going to use one of them, and then I'll set the others aside for another project. So here I'm using moss for the green, and for the yellow I believed I used sunray. So you can see I have 3 different configurations here. I'm going to kind of play around, test them out. That one I felt like was way too much, but I do have an idea for those other 2 panels. And so here's the one that I've landed on. So we're going to have it coming out from the side. And that was the last one that I ink blended. So I don't know. I just couldn't decide when I was actually doing it. So I'm going to pop up the daisy on some foam tape. And then, of course, we need to add the sentiments, which, again, I don't think about that until the end. But fortunately, the Mondo Daisy set, the die set, comes with some die sentiments. So it has friend and hi and a beautiful script. So I've die cut both of those words from black cardstock. I didn't realize it until I was doing the voiceover, but apparently I totally lost the tittle for the I and friend, and I didn't realize it when I was putting the card together. You can see I've got it there for the hi. So we'll go ahead and get those adhered down. And then for my Nuvo crystal drops, I don't ever put those directly on the card because I will totally mess up a card. So I just do a whole bunch of them on this little piece of craft mat that I cut specifically for this. This whole sheet just goes right into my drawer. It fits like in a little compartment in my drawer that's that size, and actually sits on top of some of my Nuvo drops bottles or whatever. So I just leave it like that, and I just peel off the ones that I need. And I mostly use black and white, although I did just order some other colors. So you can see the pretty powders there. And look at the shine of the metallic paper and then also the embossing powders. I just love how this turned out. I think it's got kind of like a retro funky vibe. It has kind of like really subtle shine to it, not like super glittery sparkly, but just enough shine that, I don't know, I really liked it. So I hope that you guys like this card design and will give this technique a try. I love the thicker lines that I was able to get with the embossing tool, so definitely give that a try. If you do, tag me at Notable Ink on Instagram and Facebook. Definitely like and subscribe this video. That would really help me out if you enjoyed this. And I will be back soon with more inspiration. Hit that bell button if you want to be notified of the next video. And until next time, breathe, ink, inspire.